Good evening. This is the City of Mason Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for July 29th, 2020. I'll call the meeting to order at 6:07 p.m. We were waiting for one of our other members to attend, and we also have our chairman, who is normally chairing the meeting, is not able to attend today, so we're either going to proceed with 3 right now or potentially have a 4th member. So the meeting is called to order, and the next order of business would be Pledge of Allegiance. So as soon as the flag comes up, we'd rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance with me.
Okay, 1 second, sorry. All right, got it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it
which
stands,
it stands, one nation,
indivisible, under God, with liberty and justice
for all.
Well, that's the first time I've messed that up since 2nd grade. I'm sorry.
It's weird with the lag, it messes me up.
All right, well, having had that experience, we'll go on with the roll call now.
Mr. Wolfolk?
Here.
Mrs. Frankie?
Here.
Mr. Kiesling?
Here.
Mrs. Khan show up yet?
No.
Just check.
Okay. All right, and also attending our meeting is Mr. Bill Barnett from the City of Mason. Kurt Seiler from the City of Mason is listening in. First order of business then would be to approve the minutes from the last meeting, which was held on July 1st, 2020. I'll just start off. I had sent out an email with just 2 corrections, and I'll repeat those now just for the record. On the first page, in the first paragraph labeled minutes, after the motion, then I would like to add the phrase Mr. Wolfolk seconded. And at the bottom of the first page, 4th paragraph, 3rd line from the bottom, we're just correcting the spelling of the word building. With that said, any other corrections to the minutes?
I didn't have any, and I did send an email to that effect, but I noticed right before the meeting when I was checking my emails that it was kicked back to me for some reason. But anyway, I did respond. I looked at them. Everything is fine.
We got it.
Yeah, I got it.
Oh, I don't know when I got an email saying it didn't go through. So, okay, well, good. Then it did go through.
And I didn't have any, Bernie.
Okay. Very good. So I would, if there's someone who would like to make a motion for approval.
I'll make a motion that we approve the July 1st, 2020 minutes as revised.
Second.
Very good. All in favor of approval as revised, say aye.
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 Aye. So the motion is carried and the minutes from July 1st, 2020 are approved as revised and discussed today. So for the benefit of persons who are listening in and who may not be familiar with our procedure, I'll just go over that process very briefly. The City of Mason will present each case individually with a brief statement, and they will show a video of the site. And then we will ask the applicant to announce themselves and prepare whatever statement they wish to make to support their variance request. And at that point, we might, as a board, ask a few questions. And then once that is done, we will ask if there are any people attending this session who would want to comment in favor of the variance. And after that, we will ask for people who might want to speak against the variance. So after that is complete, we will close the public portion of the meeting and we'll open it up to board discussion. And then what we do is, like I said earlier, we have normally 5 members on the board. We have 3 currently. That is a quorum, so we are able to vote on cases. We do hope that Mrs. Khan will still arrive this evening for a 4th vote. But basically, you need 3 yes votes to get approval of the variance. All variance motions are made in the positive, so you would want 3 yes votes or more for approval. So having said that, any other points that I might have missed from the board members? Did I cover it all? Okay.
Well, good.
Very good. So we'll begin with the first case, which is at 5666 Santa Fe Trail for a front yard. Yes.
Bernie, sorry. Do you want to
Right.
swear in people that want to make
Oh.
statements tonight?
Sure. Yeah. Well, we generally swear everyone in at one time. So all of you who are listening, please stand, raise your right hand, and you'll hear me administer the oath. So if you would give me a moment, please. I'll raise your right hand, and is the testimony you're giving to this evening to the Board of Mason Zoning Appeals is a testimony, shall it be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? State yes, and very good. We're ready to proceed. All right, thanks for the reminder. I'm not the normal chairman of the board, so we're a little rusty in our skills here.
Beat me.
Okay. So for the first case then, 5666 Santa Fe Trail, front yard setback variance. The zoning is R4 and it's requesting a front porch addition requested by Pendry Construction, and it's case number PLN 20-61. Mr. Barnett?
Thank you. Like I
Bill,
said,
just real quick, Bill.
Yes.
Chris just called. She's logging in now.
okay.
Okay.
Sorry, if you want to continue, then she can catch up.
Okay. Pendry Construction, who's representing Greg Trosnowski, hopefully I said that right, of 5666 Santa Fe Trail is requesting a variance for a reduced front yard setback for a covered porch. The property is in the Western Estate subdivision, which was platted in the 1980s with front yard setbacks, which are 40 feet. And the applicant's requesting this variance for a covered porch that would extend approximately 8 feet out from the house's front door. The house currently appears to be built up to the 40-foot front yard setback. And with the proposed porch cover, the front yard setback would be reduced to approximately 32 feet from the required 40 feet. And while we're not opposed to people trying to improve, residents trying to improve their properties, we still want to be cautious about setting what could appear to be a precedence for encroachments into the front yard setback.
Okay. And Bill, you do have a video, or Kurt? So maybe somebody's preparing that for us.
Get that. That's showing up okay?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so is the applicant attending currently?
Okay, let's see. Looks like we do have Todd Walters with his hand up. So, all right,
I've
Todd.
lost that screen for some reason.
that's okay. Okay, oop, Todd. Yep, there you go. Todd,
There
if
we
you-
go. How's that? We'll
Great.
figure it out together. I'm representing the homeowner. How are you guys doing today?
Very
Yeah,
good.
we're good.
Good.
Thank you very much. We are requesting an 8-foot reduced setback for the front, as Bill indicated, for a covered front porch. The reason for that setback is a handful of different things. The homeowner wanted to increase the look and curb appeal of their house. They also wanted to be able to sit out on the front porch and enjoy the neighbors in the neighborhood, where currently the house is right up against the setback and there's no opportunity without having a variance to do that as far as a covered area. They also were concerned about packages being delivered and staying out of the rain and the weather. And same with guests as they come, there's nowhere for them to get in as they're waiting by the front door for that. So that is the purpose of the front porch and the reason that they wanted to do it.
Todd, before I forget, could we get your name and address for the
I'm
record?
sorry. Sure. My name is Todd Walters. I'm the president of Pendery Construction. Our address is 7264 Columbia Road, Suite 600. It's considered Mainville, even though we're a Mason. We're in that area right there. 45039 is our mailing address. Or is it?
Very good, thank you.
Not a problem.
Any questions by our board members?
I have one. When you were drawing this up, how did you come up with the 8 feet?
So right now, the actual foundation of the porch would be at 7 feet. With our overhangs for the roof line is going to increase 1 foot. So that puts us into the 8-foot setback from the gutter line, basically, is what it's doing to us.
Okay.
Okay,
And we're within, I mean, it's real close, within, 3 inches. So that's why you see the 33 and 3/4 feet there to the front of it type thing instead of 32 feet type thing.
Is there a reason you chose the 7 versus 6 or some other number?
The reason is when everything goes in with the railings and the post, and be able to sit there, it just gives you adequate room to sit and be able to stand up and have a little walkway. So that was the biggest reason why. And if they did a porch swing in that area, a lot of them are 4 feet to 5 feet, like a hanging porch swing. And what it would do is it would end up not being able to fit up against the house, or it would rub up against the house or the columns. So that's where that 7 feet came more once we worked backwards from the post to what our inside dimension was. So by the time we're done, we're looking at an inside dimension of about 6 feet. And that's what the reasoning why.
Okay.
okay. Did you or the owner obtain any supporting affidavits, say from neighbors or whatever, that they had no objection?
I know the owner has walked around the neighborhood and talked to their neighbors, and they have not had any objections on that part. But I don't think they received true affidavits from them.
Okay,
I supplied the homeowner with the same list that we supplied the zoning, which was basically everybody within 200 feet of their property lines. They knew who was going to receive letters and information on that. and they were reaching out to those neighbors as well. So
Bill Barnett, is it 300 feet or 200 feet?
It's 300,
I'm sorry,
Okay.
300.
which is
I'm
what we
sorry.
sent the selling labels out on. So they only talked to the people 200. Everybody within the 300-foot required radius was still notified regardless.
Okay, yeah, just checking. I mean, your proposal is fairly clear and thorough as to what you're requesting. James or Chris, any other comments or questions? Or questions at this point?
Not necessarily a question. I didn't get a chance to drive through that neighborhood. Is there any other homes there with porches?
Not at this, oh, sorry. Bill, did you want to answer any of that or you want me to?
Yeah, I can answer and you can answer as well. I mean, based on the immediate area of the video that I took and just driving down the street on my way out of the subdivision, I don't recall seeing any, but then again, I didn't look at each and every street in the subdivision either.
Right.
Actually, there are a couple of homes on that street further down, but they have different elevations where the garages were pulled forward from the front of the house, so the porch kind of filled in that area.
Mhm. Yeah.
They weren't as noticeable. I don't remember seeing any of the flat fronted colonial style homes having porches, but to answer the question, there were a couple of homes with a little bit different front elevation that did have these kind of overhang porch with open porches with overhangs.
Gotcha. Todd, are they the original owners of the home?
You know what? I'm not sure if they're the original because of the age of the house. You know, we did a basement for this couple probably 18 years ago. So they've been in this house for quite a while. They've also done a screen porch and other work to it, trying to fix it up. To answer your question also on that front porch, this neighborhood is just starting to really kind of turn over as far that we're seeing in the remodeling end of people putting money back in the houses. And actually we're seeing a lot more kitchen remodels and bathroom remodels in that neighborhood. And people with the COVID, we're seeing calls in that neighborhood. So we're seeing a lot more work starting to happen in that neighborhood too. So.
Gotcha.
Mr. Chairman, the owner, I think, is on as well. If you want me to allow him to talk, or you want to wait for testimony in favor of the variance?
I think it's appropriate to have the owner speak now.
Okay. All right, Greg, you should, if you unmute, you should be able to talk.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Yes, I can answer several of your questions. We are the original owners. We've been here since 1988. And yes, to Ms. Frankie's comment, there are other houses in the neighborhood that have front porches. It all depends on the style that was used and built. I did have the opportunity to walk around and talk to several of my neighbors. I received no objections from any of them. In fact, they thought it would obviously enhance the look of our house relative to the start of construction, which is what we had done with Pendry before we we didn't start construction. We just demolished a lot of our front landscaping right before we were under contract with Pendry to begin this work on the front porch. So in summary, you know, we are certainly looking forward to adding to the house for this very reasons that Todd had indicated, you know, just to have some covering for our packages for our guests arriving. We're expecting our first grandchild later this year. So the idea of sitting on the front porch waiting for the family and grandchildren to arrive is a strong appeal to us as well. So with that, and really no objection from any of our neighbors, they all thought the image that Pendry had drawn up for us, thought it looked very nice, and I did not obtain written kind of confirmation of that, but certainly no objection to the neighbors in front of me and behind me that I did speak to.
Okay, thank you. So Kurt, is there anyone else who has expressed an interest in presenting for the variance?
Not that I see at this time, but we can, if you want to call for those in favor and opposed, I can lower all hands and we'll see if anybody clicks the raise hand button.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
So having said that, that would conclude the original presentation. If we could see if there's anyone who wants to speak in support of the variance. Please raise your hand if you do.
All right, and I don't see that anybody has clicked the raise hand button.
Okay. If there's anyone in attendance who wishes to speak against the variance, please indicate, raise your hand.
And again, there are none.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, with that, we will close the presentation from the homeowner at 627 and open it up to board discussion. I'll begin. The chairman usually offers a few thoughts on the various projects, and then we get into other people commenting and questioning. Yeah, it's 8 feet into a front yard. It does put it out further than other homes currently. I did drive around the site, and I to the side of the block, and I looked up the street, and that house is pretty much in alignment with everyone else, and the addition obviously would project noticeably, and it would make it different from all the other, or virtually all the other houses in the neighborhood in that respect. I concur that there were houses that had offset garages, and presumably the garage was on the setback line. And so adding the porches in that kind of situation is not really a variance issue where it is, and it is in this particular case. I think the board members know that usually hardships are presented with the reasoning being site issues, topography, something that causes a problem that would require a variance, but something that's simply required as a matter of just wanting to have it as a convenience is generally not significant enough reason to grant a variance. I think the point that I would just simply make is a lot of these houses are the same in general concept. So this particular presentation or this request is not a unique request that oftentimes we will grant a variance because of a very unique site situation. I mean, I do empathize with the owner, but I'm not sure that I personally can support the variance as presented.
Gotta be one, Dick.
Unfortunately. So if we could have other board members speak up.
I tend to agree, Bernie. I don't think they have too many options, or we can't offer, we always seem to like to offer some options there for them, but there doesn't seem to be any options to give. And I don't see how we can set the precedence in that situation. So, I mean, I would agree with your comments.
Chris or Deb?
Bernie, I think I agree with your comments too, and I should probably ask this earlier about the 8 feet. Like, are there going to be steps coming up to the porch? Because and I think intentionally maybe that might not really matter, but I think I couldn't tell from the figures if that was if the 8 feet included, steps up to the porch or not, or if there would be steps. So
I believe it's probably the thickness of the slab itself.
okay.
And I would say this, and Bill Barnett can correct me if I'm wrong. I think measurements, when you talk about measurements to the property line, are usually to the foundation line and not to a roof overhang. So having seen that, it's probably a 7-foot encroachment, not an 8-foot encroachment.
Okay.
And so if that helps the board to, you know, make it more acceptable, that's one way to look at it. Bill?
I think just kind of echoing what you and James were saying, you know, like it doesn't seem like there really is a workaround here, and you know, that like this property is also kind of in the same situation as almost all of the other houses on that street too.
And to circle back to Bernie's earlier comment, yeah, it's probably fair to say it's a 7-foot encroachment, all things considered. If they have the 1-foot overhang, if they were basing their measurements off the total roof line.
Right. I certainly wanted to offer that as a consideration, because you know, if it's a matter of a foot here or there, we picked up a foot already in the presentation that way. But I don't know if 7 feet is still acceptable or not. It's kind of up to the board to make that call.
Well, I think sounds like I'm gonna veer a little bit from the rest of the members. I don't think it would be out of character for the neighborhood personally. I know most of those colonials are flat faced, but there are other porches in the area. My concern is not so much for that house, but are we setting a precedent then for other homes where that wouldn't necessarily be the case? I understand the homeowner's need for the porch. Honestly, I think it would be a nice addition to the front of their home. They've obviously cared for their home and want to make additional improvements and have additional usable space. And I actually think, based on the drawings, it would be lovely. However, having said that, I also understand that our responsibility is to the city as a whole and not just one particular homeowner. I don't know if 7 foot makes a difference to me. I understand the porch swing. I was looking more for what was the minimum the homeowner could go out to accomplish an overhang that would protect packages and guests to their home that may have to stand out in the elements waiting for someone to let them in, and what would be an acceptable amount to do that may not necessarily incorporate the porch swing that they want, or, you know, some of the other amenities that they wanted to put out there. So I would be inclined to entertain something, because I do think it would be a nice addition. I'm just not sure that I can go with the 7 feet, knowing it's for aesthetic reasons and no particular hardship. But I don't know that I would have a problem putting something on the front, allowing something.
Right. I believe, you know, there are ways to apply decorative elements that don't project as far. I mean, I would even go as far as to say, you know, maybe you've got a 4-foot stoop with a roof of that. So 4 feet plus an overhang could give you 5 feet of overhang for weather protection. But it's, you know, it's a fine line as to how far to go out. So I'm still somewhat undecided on that. But if others on the board felt that there was a reason to support a compromise, I would not necessarily be the one to sink it.
Okay. Yeah, I not only look at the code, but I always look at what was the spirit intended behind it. I mean, obviously there have to be some kind of codes, or we've all been through areas where there is no code and there's no uniformity. And I think there needs to be something. And again, I don't want to say what that magic number is. I just wanted to go on the record that I think they obviously are trying to maintain their home. There are other porches in the neighborhood, so it's not like they would be the only person in the neighborhood. So they had something that would look totally out of place. Again, it's just, what is that compromise? And maybe it is just a covered stoop versus an actual porch.
Right. I think I recall cases where we had zero frontage and we did not allow an extension with any mass to it, any roof covering. There was one case where we had a street that was curved and the projection was not discernible. And so, I know the board supported that one. Again, I don't recall the amount of dimensional encroachment, but there is opportunity for compromise given situations. It's just, this one is a less clear situation than some of the other ones were.
Mr.
Any
Chair,
other thoughts? Yes.
I'll just mention that the owner has his hand up again, so I don't know if you want to recognize them or not. It's up to you.
Yes, I'd like to recognize the owner if they wish to enter into the discussion with a compromise thought.
Okay. Greg, if you unmute, you should be able to talk.
Yeah, thank you for that discussion. Yeah, obviously it seems like we're leaning, it seems like the board is leaning against the approval of the variance. If that were the case, we would certainly be open to some compromise. But before I go there, perhaps I could ask, just if I understand the purpose of the code. I think what Ms. Frankie had said is kind of how I think about what's the intent of the code, right? So, to me, I tried to do some research and get some history as to why there are setbacks, and I think it has to do with uniformity. In more urban developments, I think it has to do with ensuring that there's enough, space between the street or the sidewalk. Even at our 7-foot proposed porch, it just appears to me that I'm not compromising any of those reasons for what I see those setback requirement to be. I think it's not like I'm moving my living space any closer to the sidewalk or to the street. If anything, I view my porch as just almost part of the natural landscaping of the front of the house. So, so to me, I don't see a strong reason. There's certainly variations in the neighborhood between colonials that have a front face house like ours. There are other styles that have a porch. It's a mixed neighborhood. It's very pleasant. It's a quiet cul-de-sac type neighborhood. And the variation in the neighborhood is what is one of the appeals to my wife and I when we moved here. So to me, the adding of the porch just adds a little bit more variety to the neighborhood without, I think, stealing away anything that I can see the purpose of the code would kind of put forward, or why, what the purpose of that was. So, with that being said, certainly we would encourage you to consider the variance, as it stands in the design. And if that's not possible, we would certainly entertain the idea of some sort of compromise. But even at 7 feet, like I said, none of my neighbors objected. I'm not moving my living space any closer. I still have 32 or 33 feet of setback that is nowhere near the sidewalk or the street that would, I think, encroach upon any of the reasons why the code might have been put in place in the first place.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate the extra thought. If I could ask the city to Bill, can you give us any context on what establishes a 40-foot setback, say, versus some other dimension?
Well, it all depends on how the property is zoned. When you have the R4 zone, they're typically smaller lots, so that the uniformity becomes a little more important because the houses tend to be closer together and at the same time closer to the street. So it's all based on how the property is zoned. It determines the front, side, and rear yard setbacks. But typically, for the most part, the smaller the lot size, typically the closer the houses are together, and the more uniform they're trying to keep it. That's the intent of that.
Are there cases in residential zones where they're even closer than 40 feet?
There are some instances for planned unit developments, if they get approval to have, an even more reduced uniform setback, then yeah, that has happened. But again, that was throughout the whole subdivision. It just wasn't for one individual lot within that subdivision.
Right. I think part of what the board is thinking that we're probably on the verge of setting a precedent if we say, if we're going to approve X dimension, it's quite possible other homeowners are going to come up in this neighborhood and say, well, I want to put a front porch on mine as well. And, you know, we would have to be prepared for that. And I don't know to what extent the city has allowed that in the past. I've been on the board for a number of years, but I don't know, going back beyond that, how often we've made decisions that have in fact created a precedent, which is then becomes in effect the real thing. Deb, I'm sorry, Deb, based on your experience, do you recall any precedents established by the board in this manner?
Now, I know we have approved front porches or porches before. I can't tell you the specifics and if it was something different about that particular lot or if there was some hardship involved in it, quite honestly. And I've been on the board for a long time. This issue does not come up a lot. I will say that we get a lot more deck issues than we do people wanting to build onto the front of their homes. So I don't, and I honestly, I can remember a couple of them that were very nicely planned, but were not approved just because of this reason. Not that we didn't like the plan, not that we couldn't agree that it would be an improvement to the property, but because there was no established hardship. And as a result, there was no basis for us to approve it. So I know that doesn't really, it's not a yes or no answer to be able to help answer your question, but you know, I have seen it come up before. But I don't remember ever just voting yes, just for the sake of voting yes, knowing that it was going to create a precedent that we would have to consider down the road.
Right. Bill, I think I interrupted you. You were going to make a point?
No, I mean, it was just a quick side note, so it really wasn't anything all that important.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, I'll add that the builder has its hand up as well.
Okay. Certainly we'd, Todd, I think if you're back with us, we'd welcome your further thoughts.
Thank you very much, guys. It sounds like from the discussion, the biggest thing is the 7-foot setback sounds like it's, in most of your eyes, too deep or too close to the frontage. But it sounds like we could find a compromise possibly on that, or am I misreading that?
No, I think you're right. It seems that there is a compromise possibility here. I recognize that, you know, sometimes a dimension gets too small that, you know, you've lost the porch swing, or it's hard to get some chairs on the front porch that someone can sit and look out the front. But, you know, if you have an alternate proposal that you'd like to offer, you know, is it 6 feet? Is it 5 feet? What could you live with and still make it a pleasing elevation? Because that's part of what we're getting at. Deb and I agree that an enhancement to the front of the house, even if it's not terribly usable in square footage, just the effect of adding an overhang and a stoop, and you know, it does add visual appeal, which is a positive. So sure. I would entertain your thoughts about that.
And that's what I was sitting here and listening, and I haven't spoken to the homeowner, so I don't want to misspeak to, you know, on that end. But I think that they could accomplish probably the same thing with a 5 to 6 foot space setback on that instead. Right. I don't know if that helps sway anybody any ways that you feel like that's a good compromise. I think anything less than that, it becomes a front porch that's just not usable for sitting or anything like that. And that's, you know, I think at the very minimum, you're looking at a 5 foot, to the foundation. And again, you lose a foot with the columns and the posts, or the columns and the railing and stuff like that. So now you're looking at maybe a 4 foot sitting area inside. And you go any more than that, and now you've got a hallway, basically is what ends up
Right.
doing it. So
Right.
talking Bernie, it just isn't functional for them at that point.
Would the board members want to try to arrive at a compromise tonight, or would you ask the homeowner to think about it and present it again in a follow-up in the next meeting?
Am I still live with you, Bernie?
Yes, we still have you on.
So I'm hoping that we can not have to wait till another meeting, since we've been doing this since May. And this is just getting, pushed and pushed and pushed for
Right.
our sake at this point. So, okay.
Well, would you like to make a proposal? Would you want to say 5 feet to the foundation line? Is that what you would be comfortable presenting?
Can we bring the homeowner back in?
Yes. Greg, are you still on?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yes, that would, we agree with Todd. We certainly don't think there would be a lot of value in going anything less than 5 feet, but we would certainly accept that and modify the plans accordingly if that were an acceptable compromise with the board.
Okay. Board members, I presume, I think we've probably gotten all the input now from the owner and the builder.
Mm-hmm.
So I will reclose the public discussion at 6:50 p.m. and just ask the board if you're ready to make a motion.
All right, I'll make a motion that we approve PLN 20-61 to allow for a 5 foot, 5 foot variance to the front yard to allow for the construction of a porch, covered porch.
To the foundation line.
To the foundation line, yes.
Is there a second?
Before I say second, can we just say that we're moving it from either the 8 foot or the 7 foot back to the 5 foot? If we're gonna,
I'll go back. You want me to go back and restate it?
Please do.
Okay. I make a motion that we approve PLN 20-61 to allow for a reduction in the original request from an 8 foot setback to a 5 foot setback from the foundation line to allow for the construction of a front porch.
I'll second.
Very good. Mr. Barnett, when you're ready to call the roll.
Mrs. Khan,
Yes.
Mr. Woolfolk,
Yes.
Mrs. Frankie,
Yes.
Mr. Kiesling.
Yes. All right, the motion as amended by Ms. Frankie is approved, and the variance has been granted for a 5 foot encroachment. So we will move on to the next case, which is 2652 Rosings Park. PLN 20-63 is the case number. This is for a front yard setback variance. The zoning is a planned unit development. And Mr. Barnett, when you're ready.
Thank you. David Baker of 2652 Rosings Park is requesting a variance for a reduced front yard setback for the construction of an attached garage to the existing home. The property is located in Willowbrook Estate subdivision at the corner of Hartfield and Rosings Park, which gives the parcel 2 front yards, as we know. When the subdivision was designed and approved in 2015, it was approved by Planning Commission to have 40 feet front yard setbacks. The applicant's requesting a variance for reduced front yard setback for the construction of a third car garage that would extend approximately 10 feet past the side of the house into the front yard setback of Hartfield Lane. You know, and once again, while we're not opposed to people trying to, you know, improve their property, we still want to be cautious, again, of setting what could be a precedence for encroachments into a front yard setback, you know, especially for corner lots.
Okay, thank you. And if we have the video ready. Okay, so do we have the applicant ready to make a presentation?
All right. Yep, looks like Mr. Baker is on. I'll allow you to talk. And if you unmute Mr. Baker, you should be able to talk.
So when you're ready to talk, please, just for the record, your name and address.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yep, yes, we can.
Uh-oh. Do you get the reverb? All right. I'm gonna turn that down. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's like a triple reverb. So yeah, I guess this sprouts. We had always intended to buy a 3-car garage house.
Excuse me, so your address is 2652?
And honest communication. We bought the house always intending to have a 3-car garage. Won't get into all the ins and outs of how we ended up with a 2-car garage, but we did verify with the builder, Ryan Holmes, and I had never heard of this. My wife actually brought it up. She had a house in Middletown where this concept of a double front yard and setbacks applied. When we were going back and forth on all the issues of can I have a 3-car garage or not, and how the house would have to be oriented and everything else, they verified that we were not a double front yard and we could build or add on a 3-car garage afterwards. What I found out through the grapevine and contractors afterwards is that the builder had already pulled the permits and they didn't want to delay the build. They were trying to get some houses in certain quarters of the month. But besides all of that, the neighborhood is a 3-car garage neighborhood. It actually was a requirement in the neighborhood up until the very last few houses of the last build, at least so I'm told by the HOA president. And a lot of people have come up to me asking why I don't have a 3-car garage. So it is a little bit of an exception in the neighborhood. There are a couple other ones. There is a house on down the street on the opposite corner that is the same house. It's actually on a smaller lot. I have one of the larger lots in the neighborhood that actually has a straight on 3-car garage. It's the same house, just opposite of mine. I included in my package what that would look like. And so how I came to be here is our HOA president and one of the other HOA members, that's Mike Mitchell and then Dan Landstrath, recommended that I go through this appeals process, which I didn't know anything about. And my neighbor across the street, June Cho, got an exception to bump out his fence on his side yard, and this would be on my side yard. This would bump out the same or probably less than what June did. And then 2 houses down, angled across the street. You may have seen it or noticed it in the video. It's a very interesting house. has a fountain, has no grass in the main front yard, and a lot of interesting type of landscaping. So this would be something that very much fits into the normal visual appearance of the neighborhood. Like I said, I've had probably 10 people come up to me from moving in a little over a year ago, asking me why I don't have the 3-car garage. Definitely would increase the curb appeal. Am investing in the property, hoping to put in the 1-car garage, landscaping, fencing, trees, retaining walls, tree rings, a hardscape, a deck, looking at, 100+K improvement to the neighborhood. I've received, and actually they asked if I wanted them to attend this meeting, and I said, I don't think I need you to. I don't know if any are on, but I said probably not. But the HOA is very supportive. All my neighbors and visual sight of the house that I know well, and on all 4 sides of my immediate boundaries are very supportive of it. It's Dan Wanstrath, Mike Mitchell, June Cho, Mr. Patel behind me, Pete Parnan, who's my neighbor next to me, Katie Edwards, and numerous other people. It is in the side yard. It is 10 to 12 feet into that back set. The storage definitely is limited in the what I call a cutoff 2-car garage. Half of the front is cut off just based on how the house is built, which is why I think that the standard and requirement was to have 3-car garages in the entire neighborhood up until the end. And besides just the limitations physically in it, being a veteran that has a leg injury from something silly that happened on a submarine in 1999, I do have a leg injury that really would be nice to be able to get a push mower to have a place to put it. Because I can see definitely in a few years, it's going to be very difficult to push mow that yard still. Even today, I'm kind of limping afterwards. So I'm kind of looking forward to the future on that also. But, I guess final words would be, this would be very in line with the visual appearance and aesthetics of the neighborhood. And definitely would help me out personally now and the years to come. Thanks.
David, just to clarify, and I think the answer is obvious, but just for the record, your address is 2652 Rosings Park Drive.
That's a very good question. All of our title paperwork on the road is 2652 Rosings Park. We've verified it multiple times, but various things through the Postal Service and FedEx add the drive onto it. And we actually have some FedExes that will not deliver because the drive's not on there. And it's a constant irritation to all of us on Rosings Park. So It is Rosings Park or Rosings Park Drive, but all of our title paperwork says Rosings Park.
Okay, right. I'm not to beat this to death. It's just, just a matter of form that obviously we know who you are. We've confirmed it and we're fine with that. One of the questions I would have for you is, you were just talking about 10 or even 12 feet. Is it your intention to stick to a 10-foot dimension, or does the construction of it require even more to make it a usable garage?
The paperwork should say a 12-foot. That was the standard from Ryan's Homes. And it won't be the full 20 to 22 feet back. I'm staying out of the installed utilities and electricity. It will be 18 feet back from the front of the house, but it'll actually be 17 feet long with the 1-foot setback from the corner bricks in the front of the house.
And so it's 17 feet in one dimension. What is the short dimension of it? The one with the door in it?
12 feet.
That is 12 feet. I'm looking at the site plan. So it appears the side of your house is some distance away from the setback line. Am I reading that correctly?
It's 40 feet from the sidewalk. It's a very large side yard.
Bill or Kurt, can you clarify, am I misunderstanding what the location of the side of the house currently is?
No, but what you're seeing there, what Kurt currently has up on the screen in the pink line is the front yard setback for both Rosings Park and Hartfield Lane. And what's outlined in blue is a proposed garage.
Okay, so actually the only encroachment is on the Hartfield Lane side, is that correct?
That is correct.
And so that's going from a 40-foot setback, they're proposing it to be 28 feet.
Approximately.
Right, okay. Okay. Does the board have any other questions of the applicant?
Just curious, did Ryan give any indication why, if this is a three garage neighborhood, why your house didn't have the third one originally? Was the house set on the lot? And I did drive by your house, but I wasn't paying attention to the setbacks on the other side of your house. Was it just set on the property too far toward what's the name of the other street? Hartfield. Was it just set too close to Hartfield, or is it on the setback on the other side of the house too, that this just could not have accommodated a three-car garage from the start and stay within the setbacks?
Yep, and I'm turning up and down my volume, so after I'm done, I'll be a second before I turn it back up to hear you. But yeah, this is like I said, I won't waste 10 minutes getting into everything with Ryan Homes. Initially, the house was supposed to be a three-car garage. What it looks like, and again, getting information actually from a salesperson who I'm not sure who is with Ryan Homes still or not, and a number of the contractors, they marked and I don't understand the process, but missed getting the permits for everything to start the build. And again, Ryan Homes didn't tell me this. I got this through the grapevine. So right before we started the build, I looked at it and I said, this is supposed to be a three-car garage. They came back initially and told me I'm not allowed to have a three-car garage. I said, well, that's what I initially signed up for. I don't understand why you can't have a three-car garage. Then they came back and said, after some time and verifying, that you could have a three-car garage, but you would have to angle your house towards the corner in order to do it. They already knew that I didn't want to angle my house, and I don't even know if that's allowed or if that's a real statement. But after all of that, and they were getting ready to start the build, and we didn't want to hold up the build, that's when we asked about the double front yard. And we said, if we are not under the restrictions of double front yards, then we'll start the build as is and we'll add it later. And they said that we could do that and that we were not restricted by the double front yard requirements. When I moved into the house, a few days after March 29th of last year, I met the HOA president, and the first thing he said is, let me ask you this. Did Ryan Homes tell you that you're not a double front yard? And I said, yeah, why do you ask? He says, we've had other issues with that in the neighborhood. So that's the short version of the story. There's more to it.
Okay, now I'm looking at this now and looking at the copy that you submitted. This lot just would not have, from the start, just would not have accommodated a three-car garage. Okay.
Well, it actually would have, because the house down on the corner is actually a smaller yard with my same house, same elevation, with the same three-car garage, but on a smaller lot.
And there's a chance that it could have accommodated that third car garage attached when originally built, because they still have, it looks like, almost 25 feet that they could have not used the entire 25 feet, but they still had some more room to shift that house to the right as you look at it to potentially accommodate that third car garage if they chose, just like they'd done down the street on the other corner.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I think there was a lot of confusion, or maybe a lot of wanting to get the house built, not delayed on the permits, is my personal opinion. But they didn't want to delay the house for how it was already marked out and ready to be built and then close within the first quarter of 2019.
Because if you look at the site plan for the other house, it's 12 feet from that property line, where they have almost 25.
Is this the Duncan resident you're talking about?
That's
Yes.
correct.
Yeah.
When I drove by the site, I noticed, I took a glance down the street, and it looked like the Duncan garage was in line with the other house to their backyard. So yeah, and judging by this site plan here, they cited the Duncan house correctly, but your house was improperly cited, and that's why we're here today.
Yep. And I think the only other thing I'd add to what I've already said is, when I went to fill out the paperwork, actually as a police officer in Mason stopped in the room, I was filling out the paperwork, and he said, I think it's based on line of sight and just the look and feel of the neighborhood. And he mentioned, and I put this in my package, to look at some of the other kind of line of sight obstructions in the neighborhood based on double front yards or just a straight front yard. Directly across from me is the fence from the Chos, who actually went through the same process. My garage wouldn't stick out any more than their fence. We talked about the house diagonally across from me, 2 houses down. That house right there that has a lot of obstructions and a fountain in the front. And then actually even the Duncans have almost their entire backyard filled up with a basketball court. So when you look at, I guess, the request I'm making, it would be seamless with the neighborhood. It would actually be in line with the look of the neighborhood. It would essentially go visually unnoticed, and actually not having the garage is visually noticeable.
Okay, thank you for the additional information. Any other questions by the board members for the applicant?
It's not really, I'm curious to know, was any of what Ryan told you documented? As far as originally, you're supposed to have a 3-car garage, and anything about that second front yard?
I'd have to check with my wife. It was in her notes as far as all the questions that we asked Ryan and got answers to. I don't know if she's kept those. I don't know if it was written. We did most of the conversations verbally. I do have an extensive list of build issues where I ended up actually throwing the program, or what do they call him, project manager, Charlie Lindsay, off my property. I actually told his boss, if he lies about this build one more time, I'm going to throw him off. After he lied, I did throw him off and said I'd call the Mason police for trespassing if he came back on. His boss, Brent Wilkins, took over the build. And then I had a meeting with his boss, Brent Wilkins, his boss's boss, Mark Meyer, and his boss, Desiree Wilson, just due to the shambles and just, quite honestly, the mismanagement of this build. And, you know, I can only phrase it, you know, straight, at the constant lying that I had received during this build.
Anything else, James, Chris, Deb?
No.
Okay. So we've completed that discussion. Is there anyone else in attendance in the meeting who wants to speak in favor of this variance? Please raise your hand.
And Mr. Chairman, I don't see any.
Okay. Is there anyone in attendance who wishes to speak against the variance? Please raise your hand.
And again, none.
Okay. We'll close the public discussion at 7:12 p.m. and open it up to board discussion. I'll take a quick stab at this again. I think we pretty much discussed all the issues. The Duncan residence is within the setbacks. The Baker house has unfortunately been improperly cited. I don't think that is germane to what this board considers. I think we have to consider what is in place, if I'm correct. It's a difficult one because I know how maddening it is, and maybe there's some thoughts from board members as to what they might consider as an appropriate response to this. I'm a little stumped myself.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard one. I think the only favorable thing I would say is that it at least seems like the neighbors are all connected, and there's a lot of 3-car garages there. I don't know. It seems like there's a lot of hardship that went on. That's not necessarily suggesting that there should be a garage, but I don't know. That's a tough one. I'd be interested to hear what Deb has to say on that one.
Well, I can't say I've been around long enough to see many homeowners that find themselves in this situation where they are made all kinds of promises by builders, either ignorant builders who don't understand the code in our city, or those that do and want to sell a house badly enough that they aren't truthful. And I can't speak as to which it is. All I know is we end up with residents, and have throughout the years quite often, that we're told they could have something that in reality the code does not allow it. I know there's been discussion in the past, is it the builder's responsibility to tell the homeowner the code, or is it the homeowner's responsibility to understand the codes in the particular city in which they're choosing to build? So I don't know what the answer is to that either. I know that the applicant has made a comment about the fencing with the neighbor. I just want to go on record, because we were a part of that one, as saying I see the fencing and the landscaping different than I see in addition to the property. But having said that, I also understand how the homeowner sees it the same. He's looking simply a sight line, where we were looking at a fence that was camouflaged by landscaping that could have been put there without the fence. If that makes sense. The landscaping, you see the trees, it maybe blocks the visual, but those, we don't have any control over the trees. The trees were put up to hide the fence, but the trees could have been put there anyway. So as far as, and I know I'm talking in circles because I think I'm probably where everybody else on the board is at right now. I understand the homeowner's position. I just don't know that there's anything about this property that creates a hardship other than the fact that the code was not understood in the beginning. I don't see any, it's one of those that if we approve it, I mean, it's kind of right out there. It's not something that the land requires that would allow for this, there's any hardship there. It's just convenience on behalf of the home, on the part of the homeowner. I don't know.
Chris, any thoughts?
I think Deb said it really well. It's, I really feel for the homeowner in terms of, they had expectations of what they wanted when they were building the house. But, they're, like Deb said, that there's nothing about the property that creates a hardship for the house, other than the house is cited incorrectly in order to accommodate a 3-car garage. So, I don't know if I would support approving this, request.
Right.
And the
I know that-
homeowner's raised his hand, Mr. Chairman, just to let you know.
Okay, yeah, I will ask the homeowner to add to his testimony.
Yeah.
Mr. Baker, please go
The
ahead.
only thing, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, I guess what I'd like to add is, actually the reason I bought that particular parcel, and it's so big and so much grass on that side yard, and the yard in general, is to have the 3-car garage. I would have not bought the property if that weren't the case and if it wasn't verified. It's, as far as I can see, completely supported by my neighbors. I'm the guy who's constantly out in their yard and all the neighbors stop and talk to. I have the pristine yard, the pristine house, like to keep it in order. And they keep asking me, when are you going to start to build the 1-car garage? I'm like, I got to go through this zoning appeal process. It is smaller than all of the other garages, so it is a little bit more compact because I'm staying out of those utilities. Instead of the 22, 23 feet, it'll actually be 17 feet in length. As far as from the side yard, there are 4 trees that blanket that side yard that will provide landscaping and again, just visually, aesthetically look as part of the neighborhood. And definitely just as far as the utility of it, I'm going to need a place soon, within a few years, to put a riding mower. I don't have the option of building a shed, or I already would have. So this was the next option that I went down.
Let me follow up on that point. Is there a HOA prohibition against yard barns?
Yes, and nobody else in the neighborhood, from what I could see, and I've been told by the president, has one.
So actually, as I reread your proposal, really you're using this mostly for storage of mower and other items. You're not actually going to park a car in there, are you?
I may eventually. My daughter just turned 13, but the intent is to have the room for the riding mower and get everything else out of the garage that you can see that it's difficult to walk through, and it gets more and more difficult for me to move everything when I'm walking through it. Especially if I've been doing a lot of walking, I'm limping at the end of the day, and it's just easier to have a clear space to walk.
Right. I'm not sure if you're aware that in zoning issues, in appeals like this, we're not allowed to actually grant variances for personal reasons, whether it's illness or family issues. But not that we can't be sympathetic to you, and what you're probably sensing is the board wants to help you work this out in some way. Is it possible, let me just throw this out, you have a lot of space on the other side of the house towards your neighbor. I think Bill said there's 24 feet there. Can you consider building an addition, which is not really a garage addition, but it's essentially an attached yard barn. It's a utility room for your outdoor items. Is there some way that you could consider that as an addition instead of a garage on the Hartfield side?
Yeah, I've never thought of that or considered that or what it could be. I mean, I wouldn't be against it. I'm not sure. I think that would look very odd butting up against, just based on the proportions of the house, having a very wide side yard with, you know, a lot of grass and nothing else, and then having that butted up right up against my neighbor. I am putting in the fence actually the 1st of August, which has the 5-foot setback from that. So I think that would end up being pretty cramped, but I'm open to options. I would definitely prefer the 1-car garage and think it would look much more visually as part of the neighborhood.
Right. It struck me that when I was looking at your proposal that the garage seemed small in width and in length. You know, you can call it a garage, but it's pretty tight. And I'm just trying to see what can we offer that would be a solution for you, which doesn't create a problem or a precedent that we have to recognize when someone else comes along. Do the board members have any thoughts about, would they? Well, it would be a new proposal. And in fact, I'm not even sure there would be a variance, right, Bill, if they do an addition on the other side?
Yeah, assuming that it complied with the side yard setback for that other side of the house, then no, it would not need a variance.
Right. So that is a consideration. Mr. Baker, would you, do you want to think about this? Do you want to have us table a decision? Do you want us to make a decision tonight? Any thoughts on that?
I guess the decision, I would have to file a new proposal for the other side of the house, correct?
It wouldn't be a variance proposal. You would have a building permit submittal for the house addition on the other side. But like Bill said, if it meets the setback requirements, then you don't have to come back to this board for any kind of approval.
Right.
Then it would be only a building permit approval.
Yeah, I haven't thought of it. I just thinking of it in my head and how close we're going to get to that property line proportionally with the other side of the yard. I really think it would look odd in the neighborhood. It may be within compliance to the requirements, but to be that close to the neighbor's house and have all of this yard on the other side, I think it would look off. It would actually be more of an eyesore.
I'm just paging through looking for the, I think you said the Duncan residents. They are, basically their house is shifted such that it meets the zoning setback on the Rosings Park side. Well, you have two Rosing Park sides, but their house is shifted towards their neighbor. And I think what we're suggesting is that you could have essentially have the same thing. I know it's maddening when you have a large side yard that you can't use. But it's a consideration. So you don't have any thoughts this evening as far as if the board tables it, or, I mean, what we can do is if we deny the variance, then you're always free to pursue the other approach as to building an addition on the other side of your house. If we approve with some sort of a compromise or adjustment of some sort, then you're given that. But I think that the board members are having some trouble with sticking a 10 by 17 foot addition on that side of the house. Other board members, you want to either confirm what I just said, or am I misinterpreting?
Bernie, I think that's how I feel too.
Okay. Mr. Baker, do you have any other thoughts to add, or, otherwise we'll close that public discussion and go back to board discussion?
Hey, Bernie, I have a thought. If they went into the garage and maybe bumped that garage out 5 foot, would that change any thoughts? Internally bump that garage out instead of put a third car garage?
And not have a door?
Not
Just
have
do-
just bumping out the existing garage for just space, if space is needed?
Well, yeah, it's certainly a compromise solution. Mr. Baker, does that offer anything to you that you might consider a bump out, which is not a garage?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm just trying to visualize it, what it would look like having that much extra brick without a door compared to all the other houses. But yeah, definitely, I'd be open to that.
And you can, my garage has a fake window in it, and then you can put a fake window in your add-on, which there are ways of treating visually the house design so that it doesn't look all that odd. So anyway, it's a consideration. I might suggest, I don't know if you're under a time pressure here, but I would personally ask the board to consider making a motion to table it so that Mr. Baker could conceivably come up with a different thought, rather than us trying to just guess as to what kind of a setback we're willing to adjust to.
Okay, and the table it, I would submit new paperwork and then come back.
It could be pretty minimal. I mean, you don't have to file a new, there's no additional cost. You simply come back with a rethought plan where you say, instead of doing the 10 by 17 edition, let's say you want to do a 5 by 15 edition on the side of your house. And I think from a zoning board standpoint, that would probably be sufficient. You might have to run it by your HOA, but I'm just trying to give you some time to consider other options rather than just us voting yes or no.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'd take your suggestion and table it, just trying to understand the process. So yeah, definitely let's table it if everybody's okay with that. And I guess I would meet at the next meeting. Is that how it works?
That's correct.
Okay, and then I would just come to the front window at the office there in Mason and submit the updated plans?
That's right. Or you can email them in.
Okay. No, that sounds good.
I think just to be clear, I think if you were to say we're going to bump it out 5 feet towards Hartfield, we're going to go back 15 feet or 16, whatever dimension you choose, and then establish how high the wall is, where the ridge line of the roof is. I think somewhat similar to what you presented, whatever graphic means you have of showing the footprint and the approximate height, that would be probably sufficient from a zoning standpoint. And then your HOA may want a little further clarification as to what kind of decorative elements or, windows or whatever. But from our standpoint, I think that would be sufficient. So,
Bernie,
yes.
I just want to state, just so that it's clear to the applicant, there's still no guarantee that he will get a unanimous yes vote, or that it will be approved. It just is a matter of giving him an opportunity rather than having us vote. And if 3 of the 4 of us are in favor of it, well, then it passes. But if we don't, then he has to start that whole application process over again with another application fee. This will at least give him an opportunity to go back, rethink it, present another option or 2, if that's what he chooses to do. But again, this whole process of us discussing it starts over again, and there's no guarantee that just going through the motion, presenting something new, that it's going to be approved.
Right, and I would also like to add, presumably our fifth board member would be back. So, you know, you have 5 people potentially voting on your proposal versus just 4 as you have tonight. So I personally would encourage you to come back, even though, like Deb said, there is no guarantee, but I think there's probably a better chance if you're able to amend your thinking on this and have us take another look at it.
Okay, definitely appreciate it, and I'll do that.
Okay, so I will reclose the public discussion at 7:32, and I would ask the board to make a motion.
I'll make a motion that we table PLN 20-63.
I'll second.
All right, thank you. Mr. Barnett, when you're ready.
Mr. Keesling,
Yes.
Mr. Woolfolk,
Yes.
Mrs. Khan,
Yes.
Mrs. Frankie.
Yes.
All right, the motion to table is carried. Mr. Baker, we will look forward to seeing another thought on this, and we will continue next month, or whenever you're able to come back to us. Thank you very much. Okay, the last case on our agenda this evening is at Kings Mills Road and 741, case number PLN 20-64. It's for the corner lot, and it's a front yard setback variance requested for a reduced lot width, zone B3. Mr. Barnett.
Thank you. First of all, did the board members get the revised staff report sent out?
Did you email that today?
Yes. There were just some correct numbers that were put
Oh,
on.
okay. Can you give that to me verbally? I didn't check my email.
That's fine. I'm going to go over it verbally anyway. I just want to make sure everybody got it.
Okay.
Okay. John Delverne of Baron Becker is requesting variances for reduced lot widths for a proposed lot split. And the property is located at the southeast corner of Kings Mills Road and State Route 741. Parcel, which is currently platted as Lot 1A, is a little over 2.5 acres. The applicant's requesting variances for a reduced lot width of 189.5 feet for what will be Lot 1A and 175.4 feet for what will be Lot 1B. Both lots would still have more than the 40,000 square foot minimum that's required for the B3 zone. And with all due respect to the applicants, we're not in favor of the split. Just, quite frankly, we just don't see the hardship here.
And we're going to see a video shortly, I presume.
Yep.
Okay, thank you for the video. Again, I'll lead off the discussion here. I certainly empathize with the tenant who wants to maximize the property value of the square footage. And it does meet the 40,000 square foot minimum for area, but the problem is the width of it, which is less than the required 200 feet. I do perceive it as a self-imposed hardship, and I'm a little pressed for a reason to support this. Other board members, your thoughts, please.
Are we going to hear from the applicant?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm terribly sorry. Yes, is our applicant ready to speak?
Yeah, it looks like John Delverne has just raised his hand, so.
Again, John, I'm sorry. Please proceed when you're ready.
All right. John, you should be able to talk if you unmute. There you go.
All right, thanks, Kurt. Again, hello, my name is John Delverne. I'm with Bear Becker, 6900 Tylersville Road, Mason, Ohio, 45040, and I am the site civil engineer for the Kings Mills Plaza project. Joining the call with me tonight are the project owner, Tom Nyer, and his counsel, Tom Tepe, Justin Stone, who's representing the proposed user for Lot 1C, Tim Kling of UDF, the owner of our neighboring Lot 2, and John Volbrock, who's responsible for marketing the project. We're just here to answer questions tonight, but I'll start off by speaking about our request. We are requesting a variance to the minimum lot width requirements of the B3 development standards, the minimum of which is 200 feet. We have a user interested in lot 1, but they only require, obviously, about half the lot. And Kurt, am I able to share my screen? Okay, thank you. Yes. So this is exhibit 1. Lot 1B on your left-hand side is proposed at 175.4. Lot 1C, this is how it'll be replatted, is 189.5 feet. The carriage house car wash is the proposed user for Lot 1C, on the right-hand side lot. Lot 1B, we do not have a user. So this is exhibit 2. You can see we are creating 2 buildable lots that we anticipate will require no additional variances. On Lot 1C, the right-hand lot is the proposed user. So that site plan is nailed down, and that's how we struck the red line, the proposed lot line. What we did on Lot 1B is we developed a concept plan since we have no user there. Just kind of did a yield study. As you can see, we can get about a 6,700 square foot retail building there and park it without any variances. A note on the northwest corner, we are even accounting for the future right-of-way take, and we offsetted the building front yard setback based on that expected or anticipated right-of-way dedication. So we've considered all of that in our analysis. As I previously shared with you for Lot 4, because we had a similar request on Lot 4 back in January. Potential users that are interested in this location are not looking for a 7.5 or 7.7 acre, 200 foot wide lot in this area. The reality of the current marketplace is users are typically looking for something less than 200 feet wide and really about 1.3 to 1.4 acres. As an example, in this project, Lot 4B required only about 100, so that user only required about 170 foot wide lot in 1.3 acres. And the owner of the residual lot was very comfortable with the 154 foot wide and 1.1 acres of the remaining lot. Also at the far east end, Lot 5A, Dunkin' Donuts built on that lot, and it was only 173 feet wide and 1.3 acres of land. So, so it's working out there, and that's what the marketplace is looking for. And if you look at these 3 examples, they're all 3 of those examples are smaller lots than what we're proposing here tonight. In addition, there are 3 lots on the north side of State Route 741 in Mason Grand project. 2 of those lots are exactly 1 acre, and then the third lot is only like 1.1 acres. And one of those lots is only 126 feet in width. So I think these examples provide further evidence of the current market demand in this area. And it also demonstrates that our proposal is certainly within the character of its surroundings. So I just want to say that we are moving forward with the project. The car wash has submitted a site plan to Planning Commission. We've prepared the replat of Lot 1A and submitted that to Planning Commission. I think they'll be on Planning Commission's agenda in early August. However, approval of those items, are really contingent on approval of this variance request tonight. So that's about all I have to say. At this time, I did say we do have about 5 other people on the call tonight. I don't know if my team would, anyone from my team would have the opportunity or want to add anything that I had to say tonight. I assume, Kurt, they just need to raise their hand.
Correct.
Thank you. We would be open to other speakers at this point.
Doesn't appear that there's Tom Tepe and Tom and I are both. So Tom Tepe, you beat him out. So Mr. Tepe.
Well, it's certainly bad form to beat your client to the punch here. So I apologize to the boss. My only point that I wanted to raise, in addition to having Tom Nyer and Tim Kling on behalf of United Dairy Farmers.
Just 1 second, please. If we could, for the record, just get your address.
Thank you very much. My apologies. Tom Tepe, 1 East 4th Street, Cincinnati, 45202, attorney for the property owner.
Thank you.
Thank you. What I wanted to just highlight a couple of things here is that this board has already respectfully acknowledged the hardship that we're relying upon today, which is the market hardship. That manifested itself when Lot 4, just next door, was granted even more severe variances than what we're requesting today. So this board has already acknowledged that there is no market for these large size lots, and that the market is demanding, which will be confirmed by Mr. Nyer and Mr. Kling, the market is demanding these smaller size lots. You heard Mr. Delverne go through his statements and comments as it relates to what's surrounding it, that it's not out of character. I don't know how me asking questions of my client will work, but I think that what I will ask is if Mr. Nyer could briefly tell the board his involvement with the property, how long he's had, and if he's had any interest, if at all, in the property as it's currently constituted at 2.44 acres. Then I would ask that Mr. Kling, on behalf of United Dairy Farmers, who has extensive experience in developing lots, certainly in Mason and all other great jurisdictions, if he has any perspective on lot sizes, where market is going, what have you. If that's acceptable to the chairman, I will then hit mute and allow him to move forward, if that's okay.
That would be fine. The next speaker, please just identify yourself and name and address, please.
Okay. Mr. Nyer, if you unmute, you should be able to talk.
Thank you. Hopefully my Luddite sensibilities have worked here and I'm able to communicate with you. Thank you for your time this evening. My name is Tom Nyer. My address is 646 Main Street, Cincinnati, 45202. And I represent the property owner Kings Mills LLC. Kings Mills is a partnership which is primarily owned by family members of mine and I. We've been involved with the property since 1995. I personally have been driving the development of the property as the market would allow since 2003. And we had one large bulk sale of that property to Sinclair Community College. And since then, we've been working on trying to address the market with the larger lot sizes. As Mr. Tepe suggested, and as market evidence would suggest, that's just not what is required these days. Self-imposed hardship is maybe I'll try not to take that personally, but I think the market has imposed a change. If you look at all of the uses in that area, with the exception of a larger convenience store format, they all require an acre or less. If you look at the individual uses that are in the center, just to the east of us, those are all, 4,000 or 5,000 square foot users. The Duncan lot, the sale of the other lot for which the variance was approved in January, which was suggests a more egregious variance than what we're looking for. All of those, including the ones to the north, are smaller users. That's what the market wants now, and that's what we're trying to provide the market. We have 2 very good lots. I'm very proud of the use that is proposed to go adjacent to the UDF. And I think, as was observed, the lots still have the minimum square footage, but as a result of the way the measurements are taken, they don't actually have the requisite frontage. So I think functionally, they address the intent of the zoning code, they address the context of the market, and they certainly address the context of everything that's going on in that area right now. So I appreciate your time. I'd like to have the conversation. We think this is good for Mason after, frankly, holding on to these properties for a long, long, long time. We finally have some interest, but the interest is in these smaller lots.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Kling does have his hand raised as well.
Great. Your name and address for the record, and then please proceed.
Okay, Tim Kling with UDF, 3955 Montgomery Road, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45212. I don't know if I can add a whole lot other than, you know, I have been doing this for close to 30 years with UDF for 12 of those years. We run into a lot of circumstances these days where we are buying multiple out parcels in order to combine them to make it large enough for us. But I would tell you, I'm not really competing with a whole lot of people out there these days. Now that the drug stores are no longer very active, there's not a whole lot of people that need the amount of land that we do, and in this case, we're on 2.5 acres, but even that 2 acre size site, which we can sometimes fit on, just depends on circulation and access and things. We also deal with a lot of excess property, and in many cases, I have a similar situation where there's leftover ground, and we find that people are looking, a lot of these retail users are looking to build smaller buildings with, limited parking and drive-through, if you look at the numbers, and that's pre-COVID. So that's kind of the direction that I've seen in the market as well. We've seen it up there. We've seen it in, throughout the Columbus market where we're very active. So I think it's very appropriate, division of the land up there, especially considering what else has happened all around it.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other presenters at this point, or have we?
It looks like, sorry, Mr. Chairman. It looks like Mr. Tepe has raised his hand, and then also Justin Stone.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to kind of reiterate one of the points here is that we all looked very, very intently on your prior 2 cases with respect to the front porch as well as the side garage, and you brought up precedent, and you said that, well, if we do allow this, then does that open up Pandora's box, right? And respectfully, what I'm trying to suggest to you is you did it right next door. You recognize, this board recognized that these 2+ acre lots are just, in this particular area, in this particular market, are just not saleable. Mr. Neyer's been involved with this property since 1999. I think that's what he said, checking notes. 5. And now that there's some real traction here. So I just wanted to just kind of remind you that some members on this board, I don't know if I was not involved in that case, heard a case nearly identical to this, but in fact, it granted a variance for less front footage than what we're even requesting. So I think that's a very important point to consider. And I, again, appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay, and then Mr. Chair, Mr. Stone, you should be able to talk if you unmute. There you go.
Great. Your name and address, please, and then proceed.
Yes, Justin Stone. I represent as one of the partner owners of Carrots House Car Wash, based at 7489 Worcester Pike in Cincinnati, Ohio. That's in Marymount, zip code 45227. And I appreciate your comments and questions, and we appreciate the opportunity to present this evening. We are not real estate developers. We're car wash developers and operators, and our whole reason for being here with this phenomenal opportunity to bring a wonderful car wash and experience to the Mason community is because we are partners with UDF. This is something that we have been working on with UDF quietly for over a year. It's somewhat known in the marketplace, but not officially announced yet. So that's something that you're hearing for the first time this evening. And when we develop car washes and convenience stores together, the whole premise is to create an integrated experience. And so you can imagine what this is going to look and feel like with our premium car wash paired with arguably what's going to be the best UDF site yet developed right adjacent to us. This is something we've been working on together. We work with the same engineering firm, the same architectural firm. It's really a coordinated team effort. And we draw from advice of a lot of real estate developers and folks with expertise in the marketplace. And we've done everything we can in designing this site to maximize its use, to maximize the experience, to maximize the benefit of traffic flow for both sites. We certainly could never afford to pay more than what we need to use, but this is very similar in size and scope to what we've created in Marymount, if you were to see it for yourself. And we also know the competitive marketplace really well. If you look at car washes that are out there, they're all occupying generally on a new build, a footprint that is very similar, if not exact, to the type of size of lot that we're talking here on 1C. There is a car wash going in the area. The lot they're using is smaller. Their business model is different than ours, but it's not dissimilar. And we study all the approvals of all car washes in the area. And building on Tom Tepe's point, I did notice in the minutes from earlier in the other site that was approved down the street from us, that was approved on the basis of a market-induced constraint on the property or market-induced hardship. And I can tell you, we've got a pipeline of 12 properties right now between here and Columbus. And this is a common thread that we see that we're participating in. Different times require different circumstances. Buyers' requirements are changing, and so are ours. We spent a lot of time developing a perfect plan for this site. And what we're presenting here works really, really well. If we had the option to change it, we wouldn't. If we were going to be given more property for the same price, we wouldn't take it. This is exactly what we need. And as credible partners to UDF, I think what we are doing speaks for the market as a viable buyer of properties around the region right now.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. Is there anyone else who wanted to present, or have we concluded that?
I believe that's everybody that had their hand raised.
Good, thank you. So we will open it, it is now 7:54. We'll open it to anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of this variance. Please raise your hand.
I don't see any, Mr. Chairman.
All right, anyone in the audience wishing to speak against the variance? Please raise your hand.
Okay, and there's one. Okay, please state your name and address for the record. And once you unmute, there you go.
My name is Paul Gayton, and my address is 3535 Kings Mills Road, Mason, Ohio, 45040.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Sure. I am the Chief Financial Officer for Hogstrike, which is the property immediately to the south, the reference property. It's also known as Reliance Medical Products. Certainly the arguments that have been presented are very valid from a market value and use standpoint. The concern of my company is really primarily around the traffic for the access road. And would I have the opportunity to share my screen? Or we can use the existing drawing.
Okay, I can share that. Easy enough.
Okay.
Okay. There you go. Do you want this one or the site plans?
That one should work.
Okay.
So it's a little bit smaller snapshot but we can infer from this. So the access off of Kings Mills for our company, which has about 100 employees working on the site, is that access road that's being modified. And that's obviously very convenient for us for both ingress and egress. Obviously, with the UDF and the developments that are further to the east are going to create some increased traffic along this access for people who may live to the west or to the south over towards further into Mason, where there's about nearly 2,000 feet of frontage on the south side of Kings Mills, where this access road would be, the most convenient way to leave those establishments and make their way south and to the west on Kings Mills. So, and then also you can see at the very bottom of the drawing where there's a dotted line at the end of the access drive too. That is our shipping and receiving area parking lot. So we'll have some truck traffic going through there. The prime concern is that the amount of cars using the access to Kings Mills to the left is really, really going to skyrocket and create more of a safety issue. So if you can imagine people coming out of that access road and then trying to make a left onto Kings Mills going south is a little bit risky. There's a bit of a curve immediately to the south and to the west. I'm sure most folks have driven that, and people can come through there at a fairly high speed. So the splitting of the property would create two establishments and significantly increase traffic flowing through the area and using this access road. I'm sure we're all familiar, car washes are going to have a lot of quick in and out use. And so that's really the primary concern that we have, is for the safety of our employees and for the safety of the patrons of both the existing businesses and the planned businesses for this property.
I do have a question for you, sir. I believe we had a variance which granted that access road, the one with well, you just took it off the screen, but I believe Reliance Medical Products have been supportive of that. Is this a change in position, or am I misunderstanding?
Oh, no, the support for the access road is not the issue. It's the splitting of the property.
But one of the arguments is that potentially you're saying that the split of the property will generate more car traffic than if it were not split. Is that your point?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay. Does anyone else on the board have a question? Okay, well, if not, we will close the discussion unless, is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak against the variance? Please raise your hand.
I don't see any others, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I will close the discussion then at 8 p.m. and bring it up to board discussion. I had initially given a quick overview of it, and I'll just ask my other board members to state what their thoughts are, or if they have other questions they want to discuss.
Bernie, do you remember the lot split for the lot 4 that was earlier this year? Was that also a car wash?
Yes, lot 4B.
Okay.
He came the car wash and it was 170 feet wide.
Okay.
The leftovers space was lot 4A and it's 154 feet wide roughly.
Okay. All right.
James, Deb, any thoughts?
Looks like
You're both on mute, so if
This is Justin Stone with Carriage House Car Wash. Are you able to hear me?
we are, did you need to add something?
Well, there's just 2 points I wanted to address. The first is, maybe I did not make it clear earlier, but I, in preparation for this meeting this evening, and with the amount of time and money we've already spent to get here, as you heard, based on John Delverne's comments, we've already gone ahead and filed with the Planning Commission as well. Right, so we're doing everything we can to present to both the ZBA, to you folks, and the Planning Commission at the same time to get an approval in a reasonable time frame and not drag out the process. That's taken a lot of money and effort to be able to do both at the same time. Part of what informed us in developing that confidence and coming to you all this evening was the understanding that the lot down the street, the other car wash, as Ms. Khan mentioned, that lot split was approved verbatim as noted in the minutes from January 28th as a market-induced hardship. Not self-imposed, which were the comments that I read that were provided back to the owner of the current properties that we're trying to split, but it was market-induced. And I agree with that premise. The second is in reaction to the comments from the property owner to the south, the CFO representing Reliance. I think that's somewhat of a supposition with respect to a comparative safety statement. If this were left as a 2.7 acre parcel, no zoning variance would be required. There would be potentially all kinds of businesses that could drive even more traffic. I can tell you based on our site plan for the car wash, can't speak to what's next to us, but I can tell you for the car wash that the impact on traffic flow would be far less than even, sorry to say this, Tim, but even a UDF, okay? The ease of people to come in and out and the ease by which that traffic would flow is far greater than the other car wash that was presented down the street. We have 50% more lane and car handling. And that's important because folks will be hanging out at our site, not hanging out on the street, impeding the vehicles that are trying to get in and out of the Reliance site. So I'm struggling to understand a supposed comparative safety statement where we don't know what the business would be that would otherwise acquire the two lots not split. And no one has spent any time to analyze how we at Carriage House methodically go through extensive planning to manage traffic flow for the purpose of safety. So that sounds like just some aerial extraction to me. And I'm huge on safety. We're big on safety. We're in the Marymount marketplace. It's a very high-end customer base. It's similar exactly to the demographics and the type of customer which we deal with in the city of Mason at this site. Lots of families, lots of mothers and fathers with children who wait in our waiting room. We understand how to handle traffic safety for the benefit of the community.
Okay, thank you for your comments. I believe I would like to, unless the board objects, I would like to offer the other presenters additional time if they want to make further statements. Was it Mr. Gateman or Gates? I can't read my writing.
Yeah, Gayton and also John Delverne both have their hands raised.
Yes. Whoever raised first, please identify yourself and proceed.
Looks like John is on the top.
Okay, please proceed.
Yes, this is John. Thank you. And I just would like to offer just a little bit of perspective or context to how this development proceeded. Originally, our original proposal on our original preliminary plat, we proposed a drive access to the west, connecting on Kings Mills Road. And in that configuration, we would have had a driveway connection. And I don't know if it would have been full access or not, but it still would have been an access point along Kings Mills Road, just north of of the driveway, the adjacent property owner to the south. So it would have been two drives very close together. I think we all recognize that we could probably do better, and I thought we worked and approached Reliance Medical, the property owner to the south, to combine those drives. Mr. Chairman, you had referenced that we did have to come back for a variance to move that drive, and so it could that common drive could split the property, that common property line. And we did come back and before your board, and I think we did receive that variance. So I think from a safety standpoint, I think by combining those drives, we made it more safe, a more safe condition. And I think it's more safe than it would have been otherwise. I think we're all very conscious of safety, and we have been throughout the process.
Yeah, I do want to point out that, yes, the board did grant that. And I recall there was a conditional approval, and we had asked the applicant to meet with the city to work out any concerns the city might have. And I believe it was then reported to us in October of 2019 that the city and the applicant had agreed on the situation. And so the board did confirm that variance in October of 2019. So your point is noted. Mr. Gatenman, would you like to make a further point?
Yes, thank you. Again, our primary concern is safety on this matter, and if it be possible to share my screen, I think it can perhaps provide a better perspective with.
We'll see, Mr. Seiler, can that be arranged?
Yes, you should be able to do it now.
Okay.
I promoted you to a panelist.
Great. Let me see if I can find my screen to share. I'm clicking share screen, and comes back and says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, 1 second. Okay. All right, try it now.
Okay, great. Okay, is that visible? It's just a Google Map view.
I don't see it now.
Okay, oh, I've got us here. 2 clicks.
Okay, here we go.
So
okay, we can see that.
Great. So here's the obviously the prior access, at least for our shipping area, and it's going to be altered here to connect straight across. So this access road now is going to be a feeder for all of the establishments fronting Kings Mills, coming across our shipping area, our employee ingress and egress, and then going into the Kings Mill area, or onto Kings Mills Road, and then making a left-hand turn to go to the west and to the south here, which is really the big concern. So we've heard about the greater market appeal or marketability of the property being smaller footprints, I'm assuming equating to more activity going on from a variety of sources. And that's really the number one concern on our part. I mean, if there could be some way to allay that concern with a traffic study or something like that, that would be great. But for right now, if we don't have, some sort of assurance that this proposed split is not going to contribute to increased traffic, our position would be against the split.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Seiler, would the
Mr. Chair, sorry, it looks like Mr. Nair had raised his hand as well.
Okay, I'll recognize Mr. Nair.
All right, Mr. Nair.
Yes, thank you again. I guess several points, which I'll try to make efficiently. I do regret, and I'm a bit surprised to hear the objection from Reliance. We'd spoken with other people in the organization earlier, and no objection. In fact, support had been expressed. So I'm a touch perplexed by that. But be that as it may, I think more to the point, while I respect that illustration, while I am no traffic engineer, I am a driver. And I'm very much familiar with what's going to happen with the realignment of 741 and Kings Mills Road. And drivers are efficient people and markets are efficient things. And it is going to be much faster and much easier for a driver to stay on 741, get to the new signalization, and cut left or right than it is to wind their way through a 2-lane road, through past a loading dock, down a grade, through a UDF, and then to a different signal. That's just not the way that a driver is going to go. I don't think now, and particularly not after the road modification is completed. As it relates to that road modification, I do think it's worth observing that we have worked collaboratively with Scott and others in Mason over the past several years to provide easements at no cost, to work to optimize safety, to optimize traffic efficiency, and to make things work very well for the city of Mason, for ODOT, and for our development. We've provided property, we've provided engineering, we've spent significant dollars on that shared drive that was referenced earlier by Mr. Delverne, which improves safety, and we didn't actually have to do. We had the entitlement that was there. So I feel like we've been particularly collaborative, and I know that what we're asking for today is less than was granted in a similar circumstance 6 months ago, right down the street. And so why there would be a different adjudication in this circumstance, I find it very difficult to understand. We have been long time and good corporate citizens in Mason. We continue to have investments in that jurisdiction, and we feel like we've been great corporate citizens and are bringing a good user in collaboration to UDF, another great corporate citizen, to that site. And I feel like the substance has been more than exceeded, and we would respectfully request this board's accommodation this evening.
Okay, thank you for your additional comments. Mr. Seiler, do we have any other rebuttals or further statements?
It looks like Mr. Stone has raised his hand.
Mr. Stone, please proceed.
Yes, thank you. With respect to the idea of a traffic study, Tom, thank you. You made many of the comments I was thinking of, and I'd like to add to that, just to boil some things down into practicalities here. Mr. Gayton, I'm curious as to whether you came to the committee this evening with a number in your mind as to what would be an acceptable threshold versus on the other side of the threshold, so unacceptable as to incremental traffic count going past that part of your facility on that particular access road. And just to keep things simple, let's say it's in a 1 minute time frame throughout the day. What would be reasonable versus unreasonable versus the current situation of having that property undeveloped. So how many more cars per minute in your mind would be acceptable? So we'll let you answer that question. What I want to get to is the following point. And I'd like to hear what that number is. So I'm maybe we ought to hear that before I try to articulate this very simple point. As I mentioned before, we are partners with UDF. We will be marketing our car wash on their site. We have uniformed employees of ours at their site. You can buy our car washes through their gas pumps. When we built our business model for this location, we assume that about half of our traffic count in our car wash will come from UDF. Well, that means those cars are already in the development. You already got them there. They're buying groceries, they're buying dairy, they're buying sandwiches, they're certainly buying gas, and they're also getting a car wash with us. So that's half. So now you got the other half of the traffic count that is coming to us and presumably not visiting UDF or any other retailers there, which is probably also a little bit of a stretch. They might hit Raising Cane's, they might hit Dunkin' Donuts, but let's just say, to be conservative, half of our traffic count is coming just for us and leaving. It is our belief that most will enter from 741 because that's why we're here. We're not coming for the traffic that could come from the south. The rooftop density there is sparse compared to the rooftop density north and west and all the development that's taking place in that direction. So it is hard for me to believe anyone coming from that direction would come to our car wash, go in it, and then want to exit on the Reliance side. That wouldn't make sense to me. There's no reason to be going south on the west end of the development. The last point that I would make is let's talk about the number of cars that we might process on a full open day on an average hourly basis from when we open to when we close. It's about 60 an hour. So you're talking a car a minute. If half of those folks are coming from UDF, that means you have one car every 2 minutes coming to us, not from UDF. If the majority of those come from the 741 side, which is almost to an inescapable conclusion, that means probably we might, because of our presence and our reason for being at the location, might cause one car every 3 or 4 minutes at most to pass on the south side between us and Reliance. I'm not a traffic study engineer, but it seems to me one car every 3 to 4 minutes, maybe 5, does not create a safety or a congestion issue. So I just want to posit that, and I'll leave my comments at that. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Stone, thank you for that.
Mr. Chair, it looks like Mr. Gayton has raised his hand.
Right. I was about to ask if he could shed a little more light on the nature of his objection as far as the impact on the discharge or ingress from the Kings Mills side on the west and south corner. Yes, so you're recognized to speak.
Thank you. Yeah, so but my point really is that by splitting the property, we'll create an additional business there, which is more traffic. I don't know what the threshold is. That would be the purpose of a traffic study, to be able to assess what not only the near term, but the longer term growth in traffic would be along that access road running parallel to, or running east-west. It's just being uncertain at this point and wanting to think about the welfare of our employees who may be coming out that stretch or that access road, going left onto Kings Mills Road, and our truck traffic, shipping and delivering, navigating all of that. There's a lot of complexity going on, a lot of development still to be done. It would be nice if we had some objective information to be able to better assess the situation and make a decision.
Okay, thank you. I had a thought about I'll leave that for later. Any other comments in the back and forth discussion? Do we have any new points to make? Anything else to add to the data that we need to evaluate?
Looks like Mr. Tepe has raised his hand.
Yes, sir. Mr. Tepe, please proceed.
Quickly, the only point I'd like to make, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, is that at the time that this new road was negotiated, vetted, and signed off by the city, the property was still zoned exactly as it is today. So presumably, all of the permitted uses under the current zoning were taken into consideration at the time that new road was agreed upon and approved by the city. The zoning hasn't changed. And just think about how many total square feet you could build of retail space or B3 space on a 2.7 acre piece of property that would have a significantly higher impact from the number of patrons and what have you on that property versus a car wash, which are simply transient, right? I mean, the point was brought up, it's a whole lot less than a UDF, so to speak. So the property zoning is the same as it was when that road was agreed, approved by the city. And, you know, I asked that you consider whether or not traffic is even a valid zoning consideration for a variance where we're simply asking for a reduction in the lot width. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Seiler, are there any other raised hands in the?
It looks like that's everybody.
Okay. Great. Well, I'll take that as that everyone has made their final points. So at 8:23, I will again close that comment discussion and raise it for the board's consideration. I wanted to bring up one point that I recalled from when the access road was approved in October of 2019. I believe Reliance Medical had stated that they felt everything was aligning nicely, that their trucks could exit very straight out to the north. So it seemed to me like at that time, the whole discussion of the site ingress and egress, it seemed to have worked out well from everyone's perspective. I would like to ask Mr. Seiler and Mr. Barnett if you recall any other discussions that happened between you and the applicant. Was there anything discussed along these lines as far as traffic counts, traffic safety, traffic control measures, concerns? Did anything come up during those discussions?
Nothing that I can personally speak of.
The only other thing, and I'm not sure it's germane to the conversation, was that as John Delverne indicated, that other access drive would have been right beside Reliance's drive, and it likely, because it's so close to the intersection, it would have been a right in, right out, or possibly just a right in. It would have been a little bit of a restricted driveway, but working it out between the two neighbors and having a full access there that benefits both. As you indicated, I think the trucks have easier access straight out to 741. And so it was a mutual benefit at the time. And really, I think UDF, as well as NIRE and Reliance worked together, all three of them, to make that happen.
Right, okay. Thank you for that clarification. So board members, do you have any thoughts on how we should proceed with this?
I guess the only thing I'm thinking about is that hardship versus self-imposed. You know, what is the difference between the lots that were mentioned?
Yeah, I'll jump back into that. I mean, I do recall that the city's position here was that it was a self-imposed hardship, but I do recall the discussion that we had during the other lot split. Well, we actually had a lot split on well, that's beside the point. Lot 5 also split, but as I recall, the market condition was presented, and I think it may have been one of the factors that caused us to approve the situation when you recognize that this property has been available for quite a while at this point. And perhaps that is a reflection of the market not wanting certain things, and that there is some activity now, and they are following this trend that was presented back in October or September. You know, I think we recognize that as maybe overriding what might have been called a self-imposed hardship. So I think the board was beginning to recognize market as being of a valid reason. So I'll just throw that out there as a kind of a reminder as to what the board discussed back then. Chris or Deb, any thoughts?
I think my only thought at this point is, I don't understand. What I'm hearing is all of this had been worked out for some time, and this applicant was working with UDF behind the scenes all the time, which is fine. I mean, they certainly could be doing that, but I'm not sure. I might not have looked at some of the previous things that came to us differently had I known that all of these lots were going to end up getting split at some point. I think I wish I would have known on the front end that this one was all along being proposed to be split. And I don't know if that would have had a different effect on some of the others. I realize it's too late. The other ones have already been approved, but we went from a development that had a certain number of lots to all of a sudden we have twice as many lots is what, no, maybe not quite twice as many, but we have substantially more lots than where we started. And I don't know what the long-term impact, I understand the traffic issues. On the one hand, it would make sense that 2 would create more traffic than 1. I guess that only holds true if you have 2 businesses that have equal numbers of traffic versus 1 that might have traffic that would be, the patrons would be more inclined to stay for a longer period of time, thereby not creating as much traffic. So I don't know. At this point, I think it is, I think I have the same comments I had with the other ones from the start, is this was platted a certain way. And is this going to be a problem for the future, that we are platting things and they're always going to be changed? And all those changes affect roadways, they affect traffic flow, they affect a lot of different things that aren't in our purview to be able to control. But it leaves us now with a few lots left, and we're making decisions that I personally, I can't speak for the rest of the board, but I may have seen differently on the front end when we were originally cutting up all of these lots. So,
right.
Well, that's not helpful to any of the rest of the board members. I'm not really throwing out any information other than a little bit of frustration that all of this was going on and now it's being presented, and I feel like we're being forced to make a decision that I don't know if I'll end up regretting my decision later, just simply because there are factors now that might be different.
Right. Chris, do you have any thoughts?
I mean, I agree. I understand Deb's frustration. And I think, just, there were many of the same points that were made as were made during the hearing in January for that other lot split, kind of as we discussed during that hearing, the Mason Grand lots, like those are under a different zoning category. So that's really not relevant to our decision here. I think here, I do think it would be really difficult to justify not granting this lot split when the circumstances are so similar to what we did for lot 4. Like there was, the variance isn't as substantial, and there is a planned user kind of, the same way that there was for lot 4. So I kind of think that we've set the precedent, to approve this type of variance. But I agree with Deb. I mean, I think if we had known that this was the way that it was going to get split up from the beginning, I don't know if we would have made the same decisions that we had made. But I just don't see a way to distinguish this.
Mm-hmm. James, do you want to jump in?
Just kind of going on traffic. So, and I understand the traffic study is based on the zoning. Does the splitting of those properties, is there any traffic study that needs to be done? I don't know if that question is more for Bill, if the city, how they look at that, or if any of the residents, I guess, if they're aware of any of this as well.
I don't know. Ask for a traffic study for within a private development, even with the access road. A lot of times we do the traffic studies relative to access from the public right of way, more so than, a private access road. Now, I don't know if Kurt has anything else to add to that. He's been more involved with that type of stuff in the past than I have. But as far as I know, that's typically been the case.
Right. Yeah, I would say that's right. Typically, James, you do a traffic impact study to see what type of improvements are needed on the public right of way. So with this road going out to a traffic signal on one end with over past the UDF site, it also has the right in, right out on 741 on the west side of UDF site, plus the drive onto Kings Mills Road. So with all three of those access points, there's the improvements that they're making now are all acceptable. Typically, when you do a traffic impact study, you don't know the particular uses. To Mr. Teppe's earlier point, it was B3 zoning, and you basically assume a certain traffic count with that zoning. And so there would be no additional traffic impact study needed for this split.
I think if the objection had been supported with some hard data, whether it's an opinion or whatever, but if it had been presented with data, then it'd be easier to evaluate than to just say that they feel it's going to be more traffic. I think it might have been better presented if it had been presented with some more detail.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement with Chris. I just think it'd be hard to say no to this unless we had some of that.
I'll just kind of re-echo what Deb had said. I mean, if we had known from the start what all was going to transpire on the site, it might have been nice to have the whole thing reevaluated. We took 5 original properties and they got cut up at different points for different reasons. We had a water retention basin on one, And, but we didn't have that luxury. That's just the way it played out, and we have to react to how it is at this point. So, any feelings? Does anybody want to make a motion on this case? Or do you want to discuss further? Chris, were you about to say something?
Oh, I guess if there's no one who wants to discuss further, I can make the motion.
Okay. Yes, please make a motion. We'll see if we have a second and we can proceed on that.
Okay. I move to approve case number PLN 20-0064 as submitted to split the lot to provide a variance of the lot width.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Barnett.
Mrs. Frankie,
Yes.
Mrs. Khan,
Yes.
Mr. Wolfold,
Yes.
Mr. Kiesling.
Yes. The motion to approve the variance has been granted as submitted, and I believe that's it on this case. The agenda only just mentions next meeting for August 25th tentatively. Is there any other business the board wants to discuss, or do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All right, Deb made the motion to adjourn, Chris seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 The motion is carried. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Appreciate
guys.
it.
Record?
Yes.
We're off the record at this point.